theyeshiva.net.
Purely infinite. This came the whole explanation that even Kalim of Atzilus, right? You remember the whole word of Kalim da Atzilus, that it's not considered Yeshmayan, it's considered Gilei Helam, meaning the finite structures that contain and define the infinite light are an expression of Hashem. But if they're finite, how can they be? And this Alter Rebbe gave the whole mashal of the Kayach HaKsiva with the finger channels that infinite capacity to write any letter, but it channels it in a single letter. When I'm looking at the letter, all I see is one finite letter. The truth is, what if I could see in that letter a manifestation of the full capacity to write any letter? But this is just one expression. So from the outside, when I look at the Kalim of Atzilus, in other words, the way it affects somebody outside of Atzilus, so to speak, is there's one letter. But from the perspective of Ein Sof, it's just the expression of infinity, as explained at length. So he says, how does this apply in life? For this we have to understand, it's knowing the difference. It's also a very famous Mamer from the Baal HaTanya from the Alter Rebbe of Tavkuf Samachei, 1904. We explained the whole chiluk of Yosef and his brothers. At first glance, it looks like there was just, they didn't get along. They loathed him, they were jealous of him, all of his dreams. But obviously there was something much deeper. So this is a gewaldige Mamer from the Alter Rebbe. It's a revolutionary point of view in the entire story. And he explains as follows. Should be Yosef, Ksiv by Yosef, it says, Vayovei habayis elasis malachta. By Yosef, the Torah describes in Parashas Vayeshev, he came home to do his work. And that's when Potiphar's wife pursued him and said, this is the day, be with me, and Yosef had to run away. So the Targum says on these words, Lemivdik bekisvei chushboneh. What's malachta? It's very interesting. Targum Onkelos usually translates the words, but here he says, Lemivdik bekisvei chushboneh. Yosef had to deal with all the bookkeeping, all the accounts, all the math, or doing all the math, all the cheshbonis, all the calculations. He had to be baidik, check, examine, what we call go through the books to make all the cheshbonis, since he was running Potiphar's entire estate. And Potiphar was one of the wealthiest people in Egypt because he worked right under Parai, who was the Moshel Bekipa. Egypt was the superpower of the time. So Potiphar himself also made sure that he had challah for Shabbos, and he wasn't bereft of wealth. And Yosef ran everything. So not just his fields and his home, but all of his assets, all of his estate. So there were cheshbonos he had to make. If that wasn't enough, Nasa Mishnah Lamelech. He became the prime minister, he became the viceroy, the second in command. It wasn't he was sitting in an office, and running Egypt with a joystick. Pare told him, without you, nobody ought to lift an arm or a leg in the whole of Egypt. And as Rashi and the Mefarshim explain, it means anybody who wants to acquire a weapon, anybody who wants to train, anything significant going on in Egypt, anybody who wants to lift an arm and a leg, it had to go through Yosef. Obviously, the whole economy he ran, but not just the whole economy, the whole country was under him. Like Parai said, only the throne is beyond you. Raka kise egdal mimeka. What does that do to a person? You can't be a viceroy of a country, prime minister of a country, when you're running the entire country and you're not running it, from a detached place. You're directly responsible. So you have to be involved. You have to be enmeshed. You have to be present. If I'm sitting in a forest and meditating, it's a beautiful thing, but you can't run a country that way. V'afal pikein, the chiddush of Yosef was, despite this, amad al amdoi ba'avodas Hashem, b'dargas ha'avodah sheb'olam Atzilus. Yosef remained in his avodas Hashem. He remained connected in his service of Hashem, not just stam, but in the level of avodah of Olam Atzilus. Remember, Olam Atzilus is the first world. When we say it's the first world, it means it's the highest place of reality, which is completely divine. It's called Olam Ha'achdus. It's the entire world, reality, the way it's experienced in the oneness of Hashem. That's Atzilus. That's why it's not even called Beriah. It's not yet called a creation. Atzilus doesn't mean a different world, a different planet. Yeah, I told you, you take a spaceship and you go You go 100 billion light years and you crash into Yetzirah. 200 billion light years, you'll crash into Beriah, right? And 1 trillion light years, boom, you'll in Atzilus, and by that point, the spaceship will disintegrate. Atzilus is here. Atzilus is, it's the glasses. Or actually, Atzilus is there's no glasses. All the other worlds, there's already glasses. There's ways of looking at it because of Tzimtzum.
From our perspective, it has to be glasses because we look from the body point.
Right. No, I'm saying in all the other worlds, there's special glasses that allow us to perceive reality through different lenses. In Atzilus, all the lenses are pure.
You're saying our eye is a lens.
Yeah, our eye is a lens, and therefore it defines reality. So that all begins in lower worlds, which creates lower states of consciousness, in the word of Chassidus, through different Tzimtzumim, that the lenses of those worlds can experience them. We have to understand also, I said this yesterday, but just important, all the metaphors we talk about, for example, you want to communicate, so you have to put it into words, into letters, right? What you're communicating, the place you're communicating from has much more than those letters. It can have all the letters in the world, but the communication happens through a letter. That letter, from the perspective of the reader, it's just one letter, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, or a few letters, DNA, a sequence even of 1,000,000 letters. But from the perspective of the one communicating, that letter is a manifestation of the infinite capacity of the one who's transmitting it, right? And that's the Chiddush of Kalim. The Chiddush of Kalim is they're not infinite. They're not finite. They're infinite. But it's the power of infinity to be able to create a perception of finiteness outside in a different world. In the mashal, it's always you exist and I want to communicate to you. In the nimshal, the kalim are the ones that create the identity of finiteness. They're not just communicating to finiteness. Because of kalim, there is this concept of finiteness. So in the Darg of Avodah of Atzilus, this was Yosef. That's a paradox. How can both exist? Ve'ilu ashvatim aleim nemar veheim lo hikiru. On the Shvatim it says they did not recognize Yosef. Vayakir Yosef esecha veheim lo hikiru. He recognized them, they didn't recognize him. So the literal interpretation is because he was young, he was 17 when they sold him. Like Rashi brings from the Gemara, and now he had a big beard. Remember, this is 2 decades later. So from 17, right? This is more than 2 decades later because Yosef was sold at 17. And then he stood by Pari when he was 30. So that's 13 years later. And then there was the 7 years of famine. So Yosef was 37. And now it was already the hunger. So Yosef was now 38, 39. So you're dealing with 20 years, 21 years, almost 22 years. So people change. That's the literal interpretation. But physically, he recognized them. They didn't recognize him because they were older already. So he saw their features didn't change that much. His features changed. The Alter Rebbe says a whole deeper word. Vayakir Yosef es echav. They had a hakara. He had a hakara in their avodah. They didn't have a hakara in his avodah. They couldn't have a hakara. They didn't have the tools to recognize his madrega. Not that they didn't want to. Heim lo yikiru. They weren't makir. They didn't recognize that there's such an approach. You know, sometimes people, not to compare, this is on a much higher level, but on a lower level, sometimes people, they grow up a certain way. They can't even have a hakara in something. Some of you understand this very well. That's outside of their orbit, right? Like sometimes you trained a certain way. If this is what somebody looks like, right? He's obviously an apikoidus, a koifer, a shaita, whatever it is. A goy gomor, a shegitz. A regular goy is a goy, but he's a goy gomor. So it's a different level. It's not because I know. It's because this is how I protected myself. I don't even have a hakare. I don't even begin to understand the soul of the other person. It takes maturity and humility, I should say, humility to be able to say, maybe there's something I don't know. Rather than put everyone into my box. On a much deeper level, they didn't have such a hakara. Why not? Look at their entire life, he says. Even though Kadeshin yani yer lo yaval bolo isam lava das aboide lo hoysela makara beifen of das shel Yosef. Shabi Yosef be Mamer de matzav shal yodi nasim kol prote in yonim that it's mitzrayim erves haaretz hoysave das kaifen avoide by Atzilus. When they came to Mitzrayim, Pari asked them. Yosef said, Pari is going to ask you what your vocation is. What do your job? He'll hire them. They're good, capable guys. Jews know how to do some stuff. So Yosef said, tell him that you were always shepherds. And when they came to Pari, he asked them, Mama, what do you do? He said, we were shepherds from our youth. We never did anything else but shepherding flock. Now, this wasn't a lie. This was true. Already at the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, you see, right? They were all shepherds. Yaakov Avinu was extremely affluent. He had tremendous amount of flock, and they were responsible. That's why he sent Yosef to Shechem to go look at this brother, how his brothers are doing, how the flock are doing. So they said this was our avodah always. What was the reason for this? So the Alter Rebbe explains, because a royet sign, a shepherd is the most conducive form of work that allows you to remain disengaged from the grind of a physical world, which by definition creates tremendous pressure to pull people in and lure them into all types of thoughts and emotions that are connected to the very physical and pressuresome and materialistic and never mind promiscuous and immoral world. Shepherds. Why? First of all, you're in places of nature. You're not in, urban cities, even though then there were no trucks and cars, but the concept existed also in Mitzrayim. You're in communion with nature. Sheep, goats, you're dealing with natural animals, domesticated animals, right? So there's a certain serenity, there's a certain tranquility. If you ever hang out a few days, you see right away, it's a different rhythm. You wake up with the sun, you go to sleep with the sun. The whole reality, the environment is, you have to be with greenery, they have to pasture, and they have to be near water. And what do you have to do? You just have to be there and take care of them and guard them. So the Shvatim really, 24/7, they can remain in a space of transcendence. They remain in a space, like we spoke yesterday, of meditation. Real is baidadus, real is bainanus. And this is not a small thing. This is not a small thing. This is a hard avodah. Real meditation, real spirituality is not a responsibility. It's in many ways much more responsible than anything else. It's a choice that I want to live in a space of love, of light, of infinity, of truth. And it's not easy. We know today to get somebody to meditate for more than 60 seconds is an avodah kasha. Your thoughts go everywhere, and there's a phone and responsibilities, and in the middle there's 100 texts. It's not even like... Most people don't even know what you're talking about. But the truth is, in Tanakh we see that there were thousands and thousands of Jewish prophets. There were schools of prophecy. What did those Basi Medrash look like? They weren't serving cholent over there. The Basi Medrash of Nevi'im was schools of prophecy. It was schools where you needed to train your antennas to experience spiritual energy. It's a whole different lifestyle. It's a whole different space. Those who are involved with these things even today through various means, no, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle of living in a space which is extremely, extremely safe, extremely secluded from any enmeshment and involvement with things that can bring you down, especially corruption. But even not corruption, even just politics, I don't know if maybe the two are synonymous, but even if it's not corruption, it's just the pressures of life. So Royet Sign, they were shepherds because they wanted to be his baidadus. Why? All for avodas Hashem. Yeah, the Jews in the desert also had that. What they do all day. It's not just an intellectual change, it's a spiritual change. It's being in an emotional space of love of God. It's celebrating the spirituality, the relationship with Hashem. It's moments of daily gratitude, 24/7. You're a conduit for the energy of God coming through you, and you're living it, you're feeling it, you're experiencing it. It's an entire different modality. And for them, this was essentially what Judaism is. That's what it is. What else is there? That's it. And the truth is, we look at what do you waste your time all day? It's not everything else. Go get a job, right? Go make some money. But the truth is, we run other places, very often Like Rabbi Parsha was a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. He once, of the Alter Rebbe Mitzvah Tzemach Tzedek, he once said, if the Balei Taivus in the world would know the geschmack of Elokus, they would abandon all their taivus and they would be involved in Elokus all day. If they would know the geschmack of godliness, they would relinquish all their other addictions and they would go there. So I once said this over to somebody. He was a big Baal Taiva, let's put it that way. He says, obviously the Hillel didn't know about Taivus Elam Haza. He says, it was easy. Aravim Babroisky was a Gon Oilam, obviously. So I told him, obviously, you don't know anything about what it means to have a geschmack in Elokus. And maybe both are right. Maybe both are right. It's a big avodah because it's letting go of the getting pulled into distractions, and it's achieving real bliss, not distractions, bliss. Bliss can only come from the soul. Bliss can't come from my phone, from good food. It's all nice, but that's not bliss. Those are distractions. It's only when the body becomes a channel for the soul, for the animal soul, and the animal soul becomes a channel for the divine soul. Only when you respect that hierarchy. The hierarchy in Tanya. Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Bahamas Guf, and they work together. If the Guf becomes a substitute for the Nefesh Elikis, the Nefesh Bahamas becomes a substitute for Nefesh Elikis, it's like allowing the puppy in the house to take over the house. It's a disaster for everybody. The puppy is also not happy. A good puppy likes when there's a good tati and a good mommy that say, you're the puppy, come here, here's breakfast. The Nefesh Bahamas likes, it's a puppy, it's trying to survive. It's a cute puppy. Sometimes it's a German Shepherd, depends what type of animal soul you have. But when it's in that hierarchy, it could be very content. Anything else, if I think I'm going to pursue the animal soul's gluttony at this moment, that's going to make me happy, you all know it's exactly like addiction. It makes people miserable because I'm completely disrupting the hierarchy. The system doesn't work. The Nefesh Elikis is what it is. It needs dveikus, it needs truth, it needs authenticity. So when the body and the animal soul are trained to work completely in synchronization with the divine soul, there's a sense of bliss that comes internally. And that can be maintained 24/7 when I am in the proper mode. And there's no bliss as big as that. There's no bliss in the world is deeper than that. All other bliss is a form of distraction. What's next? What's next? What now? Okay, now we're going out. What's next? We're going on vacation. What's after vacation? We got another vacation. What happens then? You're depressed, so you go to therapy. I'm being a little humorous here, but you understand the point. Nefesh Elikis, it's not looking what's next. There's no what's next. This is it. But it's very hard to live that way. So they said, yeah, you have to train. You have to be in that school. You have to be in that environment. Let's disengage. And throughout the generations, this was a real model of Avodas Hashem. Each person on different levels, right? But real tzaddik, what do I mean real tzaddik? I don't mean real tzaddikim that live somewhere in an island. Real tzaddik, I mean people who get it. That's what I mean by tzaddikim. People who get it know how real this is. It's in this space of sacredness, you are constantly experiencing, as much as you can, the rhythm and the miracle of creation, and you realize, I'm just a conduit. It's the ultimate bittul, it's the ultimate humility, and that's why they didn't want to engage in anything else. Yeah, similar to the Meraglim, they didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael. Yeah. Not only that, Alter Rebbe says of art, it says in Parshas Miketz Vayigash that Toyavas Mitzrayim Kol Royei Tzoyin. By Egypt, all shepherds was an abomination. So the literal interpretation is because they worshipped sheep. Sheep was their god. You know, like the Hindus have the holy cow. So they had the holy sheep. That's why slaughtering the Korban Pesach as a sheep, the Even Ezra explains it was a big thing because for them, sheep were holy. You didn't slaughter a sheep, certainly didn't eat lamb chops. And the whole Korban Pesach was dafka lamb chops. The Alter Rebbe says a deeper word. Toyavas Mitzrayim Kol Royei Tzoyin. The whole shit of Mitzrayim was that they abhorred this concept of being in seclusion with the divine. That's not a way to live. Toyava, it was an abomination. It was ridiculous. The Royei Tzoyin is not just the shepherds. It's the whole concept of what the Royei Tzoyin represents. That's what the Shvatim said. This is what we did all our life. I'm bringing it out because people don't know. They think his Baidadus just means you can't be successful, so you run away to a corner because you don't want to deal with pressure. No, you don't want to deal with pressure because you want to live. You don't want to be dying. Either you're busy living or you're busy dying. You don't want to be busy dying. You want to be busy living. So they felt, this is a royal sign. Suddenly they have a brother. And a baby brother. The baby brother, right? Suddenly, it's a whole different life. A whole different life. Already as a kid, he's dreaming. Everyone, remember then, farming, right? Fields, that was real estate. You had a lot of fields. That was like having buildings on Fifth Avenue. And Yosef HaTzadik is dreaming about agriculture, and all the sheaves are bowing down to his. The whole language already was foreign to them. And then the sun and the moon and the stars are bowing down to him. The whole language, this is not Judaism. Maybe it's the closest thing to Judaism, but it's not Judaism. Something was off here. And indeed, his entire life plays out a completely different trajectory. So the Alter Rebbe says, they didn't have the tools to have a hakara, a recognition. What type of life is this? Who made this? Obviously, you want to destroy Judaism from within. That's Yosef. You're coming in and you're going to contaminate us with all these foreign ideas. That's a very dangerous thing. Esav separated from Yitzchak. Yishmael separated from Avram, so they didn't contaminate. But Yosef is the enemy from within. Very subtle enemy.
Nothing changes today.
V'heim lo yikiru. Very edel of art. So it wasn't the Shvatim's lowliness, it was their loftiness, their sublimity. That's what he says. Yosef lived in Mitzrayim and Ervas Haaretz. Mitzrayim was a promiscuous place. You see, his own master's wife was trying to do something not nice with him. And he was thrown in prison. Why? Because he was innocent. So you understand what type of place he was dealing with. Ervas Haaretz. And yet, his avodah was ba'olam Atzilus. So the question is, why couldn't the Shvatim understand it? So the Alter Rebbe says, "V'tam adav lefiche dargas hafratim ba'olam habriya, ve'ilu dargas shel Yosef ba'olam Atzilus." Their neshamas come from Beriah. His neshama came from Atzilus. You hear the word? They came from a lower space. So for them, they had to run away from the finite world in order to touch Ein Sof. He came from Atzilus. What's the chiddush of Atzilus? What did we learn before? That the kelim of Atzilus are not finite. There's no finiteness in Elokus. The kelim of Atzilus is the way infinity expresses itself through finiteness. But that's in Atzilus. In Bri Yitzir Asiyah, how does Bri Yitzir type up kelim? Limits, definitions. You remember the whole word of the Alter Rebbe, what's kelim of Atzilus, right? The machlokes is what kelim of Atzilus is, the Rikanti and the Mareches, the two opinions. So this is the hemshech, this is the execution and reality of that whole idea in Kabbalah. It's one of the big chidushim. Usually you learn about kelim of Atzilus, machlokes of Kabbalah. It's all abstract stuff. Yeshman, here he's showing this is where it translates. It's not a haskaladik philosophical debate. This is where it translates. Yosef could not get more finite, more limited, more restricted in terms of spiritual consciousness than his life. It's not just he lived in Mitzrayim as a bookkeeper. That's also pressure, at least 9 to 5. But 5 o'clock you go home and you meditate. You know, you have a job, you're in your office, you show up, 5 o'clock, you're a free man. That's not Yosef. First he's a slave by Potiphar, then he's a prisoner for 12 years, and then you think, okay, now he goes on vacation, right? No, now he's the Mishnah Lamelech, and Pari says, you're in charge, you're in charge. And as the Pasuk says, Yosef hu amashbir bar, anyone, he fed everybody. And they came from the whole world, they came from the whole region to eat, and it was all him. Yosef hu ashalit hu amashbir bar. Such a person is in the gvul shebegvul, completely entangled and enmeshed and consumed. If you're a neshama from Beriah, you look at it and you say, oh my God. It must be that our brother is the black sheep in the family, pun intended. Actually, if he would be sheep, nishkeferlich, he's the black goat in the family. Esav is called a goat, Yaakov is called a sheep. Yosef is the black sheep in the family, the black goat in the family. He doesn't belong in this family. But why? Because mitzad olam habriya, they're right. They're not wrong, they're right. Mitzad briya, there's a separation. Either du bist ein ehrlicher, chassidischer, pnimiisdike Yid, yeah? Or bist a chitzoniisdike, weltische, I don't know, I could use different words, but we'll stay away from them. But the bottom line is, you're somewhat compromised, you're contaminated, you're not the real thing. And they looked at it and they're like, Nebuch. You need to be a tycoon in real estate because you're not friendly with your soul. If you can only become friends with your soul, you don't need to be a tycoon. Who needs it? What do you need it for? So you're going to have a page in Wikipedia? They used to have a who's who. So you'll be in the book of who's who? Huh? The first oligarch, Shekoyach. So you'll become a celebrity, so you're going to have on Facebook 200 million followers together with Instagram. So what's going to happen? So if somebody sees you, they need to take a selfie with you, and you'll be able to have an estate in Florida that costs $21 million, and in southern France for another $30 million. Okay. And your children won't talk to you, and you'll be on your 6th marriage and in court. It's fine, you want that. Gesundheit. So felt mir nicht aus. I don't need anybody to see me. I don't need anybody to know me. I just need to be with God. It's a much more real life, much more peaceful, much more normal. I know I'm speaking heresy in America 2024, but it's true. Anybody who knows about these things knows it's true. Vaharaya, this tycoon, right? He says, he looks at this simple, guy who has nothing, but he's peaceful and he's jealous. Why is he jealous? And this is in a very simple way, but it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. The whole relationship with this, what this is, you don't need it, you don't want it, you just don't know yourself. Mitzad Olam HaBriya, and remember, Olam HaBriya is a very, very heavy, very deep world. It's Olam HaSiyah, Olam HaBriya is not, Olam HaBriya is very, very godly world, but it's not Atzilus. So over there, it's the way Kalim, it's back to our mashal. It's when I'm looking at the letter, when I'm looking at the DNA letters, I see finite, defined letters. I look at the world, I see a defined world. Divinity is not defined. In Atzilus, Kalim, also defined, but it's not defined. It's the way infinity is expressed through the letter. So you look at a letter and you see the Ein Sof, Ein Sof. But what's the chiddush of Kalim? That in another world, meaning from the prism of infiniteness, it looks like everything is finite. And as we said, that's the beginning of all darkness and even evil. Evil doesn't begin with evil. It begins with defining light as light. Once you define light as light, now there's something called darkness. Once the infinity is concealed, now, once I'm detached from infinity, now there's already so many different definitions of life, all the way down to toxicity and disassociation and fragmentation. But it begins where? It begins with Gvul. Where does Gvul begin? Outside of Atzilus. It's all Kalim of Atzilus, but the way Atzilus experiences Kalim is just Koyach HaGvul of Ein Sof. It's the final expression of Ein Sof. You with me? So what's the accomplishment of Kalim? That outside of Atzilus, it can be interpreted as Gvul, and that begins in Beriah, Kalim the Biyah. So Mitzad Olam HaBriya, you have to choose which world you're going to live in. So Heim Lo Yikiru, they couldn't have a Hakara in this. For them, again, I'm going to use a very crass mashal. For them, an Erlich Yid, has to look like them. When you look at Yosef, it's not the real thing. And therefore, he's more dangerous than other people. He's more dangerous because he can infiltrate. Mele, if he was a real goy gamor, fine. I'm sorry, if he was a goy, fine. But this guy is much worse than everybody. Now you have to understand the vort here. The vort is that from the perspective of Beriah, they're actually right. In other words, you can't fake Yosef. If Yosef is not the real thing, they're taka right. In the space of Beriah, yeah. Or let's put it differently. If Yosef wouldn't have what his brothers had, he can't be Yosef. If I jump into Yosef without connecting to my soul, I can't be Yosef. It's a fake version. It's fake news. And then it's taka dangerous. If a person says, Dira b'tachtoinim, I need to daven, I need to learn, I need to connect to transcendence. No, the kavanah is gvul. That's not Yosef. That's fake news. It's a forgery of Yosef. It's using Yosef against Yosef. The reason Yosef could be Yosef is because he was from Atzilus. Because he was more divine than everybody, not less divine. You can only be Yosef when you're so anchored in Ein Sof that you see the Ein Sof even in your books, your bookkeeping books in Egypt. You're dealing with the economy of Mitzrayim. You could see the Ein Sof there also. That's the only way you could be Yosef. If not, the brothers are right. This is the sensitivity here. It's not... Yosef is not more modern than his brothers. If you want to put it differently, Yosef is much, much more... I'm using the word, I don't mean it literally. He's much more frum than his brothers. He has much more Yerei Shamayim. The word is not so frum. He's more anchored than Ein Sof. He's from Atzilus. What did the brothers do with Lamata and Tachlis? Sof kol sof. Yeah, mitzad olam habriya. You need precious. You need to disengage. We can all relate to this. When a person is involved in this type of spiritual work, right, you need to go into a different space, physically and emotionally. I can't sit at my desk with my computer, with my phone. It's just not going to happen. You know that. So people live fragmented lives. Maybe even if you're into this, 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, you'll take 2 days, 3 days, a week, call it a retreat, whatever you want, right? But then, reality is calling you. The Shvatim said, reality is not calling me. This is reality. I'm not taking a week retreat. I'm taking 90 years retreat. I don't need a retreat. Everything else is a joke. Retreat, that's a reality. Everything else is a joke. Well, I have to live there. I don't want to live there. I don't have to live there. Avram was a shepherd. Yitzchak was a shepherd. Yaakov was a shepherd. The Shvatim were shepherds. In order to appreciate Yosef, in other words, you first have to understand his brothers. If not, you don't appreciate Yosef. Yosef was a worldly guy, he was a macher. He was a chevraman. When he was a kid, he was already running Hatzalah and Shoimrim and Misaskim and Mizamrim and Meshayrim, and he ran the place. To appreciate Yosef, you have to first appreciate his brothers.
If you appreciate Yosef, your neshama probably comes.
Or the other way. And here the Alter Rebbe says of art, it's like, it says Mamer Gilia Lakus. He says weiter, V'zeu shomer Yosef la'echav hatachas Elokim ani. When Yaakov Avinu passed away, so the Shvatim, the brothers, were afraid that Yosef is going to take revenge. As long as Yaakov was alive, he was respectful of his father and he contained himself. But now, Yaakov passed away, so now it's time for business. It's time to, right? It's time to pay back your debts. You tortured me. Let me teach you about life. So they came and they cried to him, and they cried to him and they said, we're going to be your slaves. So Yosef started to cry, and Yosef told him 3 words. Hatachas Elokim ani. You think I'm Hashem? You think I'm a substitute for Hashem? So the Mefarshim say, what was he saying? So Rashi says, basically, you think I'm God. Let's say I want to hurt you. You think I could hurt you? Look at you. You tried to hurt me, you couldn't hurt me. So you think I'll be able to hurt you? That's what Hasachas Elokim ani. Am I Hashem? Well, what are you? Don't worry. I don't run this world. This was Yosef's response. Other people have other Mefarshim say different things. The Alter Rebbe says the words Hasachas Elokim ani is a whole different word. Hatachas Elokim ani. You think I'm under Elokim? Tachas means under. Tachas, tachton. You think I'm under Elokim? That's the whole issue. The whole issue is you think I'm under Elokim. Pirush, I'm higher than Shem Elokim. I'm not under Shem Elokim. Malchus da Atzilus, hamakar da olam is bri yitzir asiyah. Shem Elokim represents Malchus of Atzilus, which is the source of bri yitzir asiyah. V'loi tachas Shem Elokim k'moi atam. The difference is you're under Shem Elokim. Your consciousness is post Shem Elokim. My consciousness comes from Atzilus. It's beyond Shem Elokim. Elokim is the gematria of Hateva. Hate, the nature is Elokim. Aleph Lamed He Yud Mem. This Yud Kei Vav Kei is Haya Hoive V'yiyeh. Elokim is begematria Teva. Elokim is Midas HaTzimtzum. Midas Hadin. Elokim is the restriction into Teva. Teva is from the word tubu, drowning. In other words, you don't see the Kayach Eloki in the world. So the world looks finite. Your neshamas come from Olam Abriya. Olam Abriya is a product of Shem Elokim, which is Malchus of Atzilus, which condenses itself into Beriah Tzir Asiya. So by you, there's friction. By you, there's a division. By you, there's polarity. By you, it's either this or this. The Yosef here is summarizing the whole machloikus in 3 words. You don't understand who I am. When you're in Atzilus, it's the most modest thing to say. We say, oh, me. In Atzilus, the whole I is Ein Sof. When we got Takas Elokim money, you're thinking, you have to look at from the lenses of Yosef. It's the most modest thing to say. Moshe Rabbeinu says, V'nachnu ma, what am I? Well, I'm a Motzei, I'm Bittel. Moshe wrote, Va'ish Moshe anav ma'id mekal adam Moshe v'nabdoma. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, V'zois habracha shaberech Moshe ish Elokim. He calls himself ish Elokim. Okay, he's really taking dictation, but he's writing these words. In Zohar it says, Rashbi said, Anosim on a ba'alma. I'm just a simon. I'm just a sign for Hashem. So Yosef is explaining to the brothers the whole Inyan. V'kivin she Yosef hayim b'chinas ha'atzilus, l'chein lo hoysa machshava medivrei olam mevalbelis ha'isik klal k'mish mevayin adon marash. So Mamer from the Rebbe Marash, Roni v'simchi tofrish chav zayin. Based on the Alter Rebbe's Mamer, he says that's why the thoughts of the world couldn't be mevalbel him. Why couldn't they be mevalbel him? The thoughts are very finite. The answer is because in Olam Atzilus, the kelim are not gvul. The kelim are bli gvul. They're kelim in the sense that the way they're perceived by that which is outside of Atzilus, it can affect that outside of the Gili of Atzilus, you experience Gvul, and that's how Taka, Beriah Tzir Asiya are created through Shem Elokim. But in the world of Atzilus, Kelim are not Gvul. It's just the Koyach to create Gvul in a different world. Because Hashem has the Koyach of Gvul and Bli Gvul, and that's what Kelim are. Kelim are just an expression of his Ein Sof. Since Yosef is from that space, it's not Asachas Elokim money. It's beyond Shem Elokim. Beyond Shem Elokim, then you would understand your brother. So it's not a stira. He's a Mishnah Lamelech, he's in Egypt, the ultimate finiteness, and at that moment he's completely Dovuk in Hashem.
Moshe was also Atzilus?
Moshe also. But by Moshe you don't see that engagement with the physical world. Yosef was dressed as an Egyptian, he spoke as an Egyptian. Yosef wasn't an official Jew. He was so to speak, an Egyptian, right? He changed his name to the pirate called Safnas Paneach, gave him an Egyptian name. That's the Chiddush of Yosef. In other words, when you looked at Yosef from the outside, it's like, so to speak, Biyah looking at Kalim, what do you see? You see one letter, you see Gvul. When you saw Yosef on the inside, you saw that there was no finiteness. Everything was Ein Sof. So if everything was in Ein Sof, he can go to places that nobody else can go. If his brothers would go there, they would take a fall. They had to stay away. But Yosef could be fully present there. Why? Because he was completely rooted and anchored in the truth of Ein Sof. And Ein Sof is Lamata Adein Tachlis. Only because it's Ein Sof it can go Lamata Adein Tachlis. If it's not Ein Sof, it can't go Lamata Adein Tachlis. Unless it's transformed. Unless it becomes that. So there's really 3 levels. There's the Avos, there's the Shvatim, and then there's Yosef. The Avos were, let's call it this way, the Avos were like the Oidus of Atzilus. The Shvatim were the Kalim of Beriah, and Yosef is the Kalim of Atzilus. In other words, the Avos, they were shepherds, not because they had to disengage from the world, but because there was no world over there. It's like, there's no world. That's why they were shepherds. They were not escaping it. They lived in a place where there was no world. The Shvatim lived already in a place where there's friction. So they had to disengage. And Yosef had the Maila of Atzilus, but the way it was Atzilus was present Lamata de Intachlis, so he can come in to those places. So he really brought out the truth of the Avos within the physical world. By the Avos, they were shepherds, not because they were running away. It's like, so to speak, Oidus of Atzilus. It's not running away from the world. It's L'chatchila in the world of Ein Sof. It's like the neshama before comes down into this world. It's not running away. It's L'chatchila in a world where there's nothing else outside of Elokus. It's above. They were above it. It's like they weren't exposed to it in the sense that it didn't exist. The whole challenge didn't exist. It's like, oh, you'll live in a world of Ein Sof. But Yosef HaTzadik, the Chiddush was that he came into the Levushim of Mitzrayim. He'll explain now more. With this, the Rebbe Marash explains also that expression in Chazal, it's known, it's revealed and known before he who created the world. The expression is Yadua, Goli v'Yadua. It's known. It's a very famous, Goli v'Yadua, it's known. Sheyadua lefon of memela ve'enu b'chinas islapshus b'chinas hamachshava. There's two forms of knowledge. There's Yodeya and there's Yadua. Yadua means it's like known memela. You're not enmeshed in the thought. When I want to know something, I have to think about it in order to know it, to acquire it. So by definition, I go into the thought, and the thought hijacks me. That's Yodeya. Yodua is, it's known. It's known. The Rambam has the expression, Hashem is the knower, and Hashem is that which is known. So he says, this expression has in it two elements. Das tachten u'boifen shehu ha'yedeya, shehu boifen shel eslapshus kavayach. U'mitzad zeh yesh shinui ben kaidem ha'yediyah b'shas ha'yediyah u'l'acher ha'yediyah. V'das elyon u'boifen shehu ha'yadu, hainu sheyadu l'fon of memela loy b'b'chinas eslapshus. That's Yadua. In other words, there's what's called Das Tachten, Das Elyon. A lower level of knowledge and a higher level of knowledge. A lower level of knowledge is called Yodeya. A higher level is called Yadua. What's the difference? Yodeya is behislapshus. I become involved in the knowledge. And that's the whole idea of how thoughts work. We spoke about the concept of meditation, of disengagement. What is the hardest part? Not to follow your thoughts. In the world of meditation, everybody knows the basics of it is, close your eyes, breathe, relax, right? And start, what? So you start thinking, I have time. Okay, so watch your thoughts and don't go there. Oh, really? What am I going to do now? You understand? And the thoughts don't stop. Somebody's probably texting me. 1 second, I forgot to call him back. Oh my God, I have to pay. Oh, in the car, there's a point. You're done. After 2 minutes, you're like, you know what, this is not for me. So what they'll tell you is, it's fine. Don't get upset. Just watch your thoughts. Don't get angry. Don't say, I'm now going to free myself up, because the thought that I'm now going to free myself up is the hardest thing. It will not allow you to free yourself. But it's really just watching the eye, observing the thoughts. And the fact that you can watch yourself, you can watch those thoughts, means that the eye is not the thought. The eye is not the thought. And with real practice, and with real skill, and with real discipline, and presence of mind, this could bring a person to a very deep place. There's also other methods that are well known and not so well known. I'm just giving one example. But all of these methods have a common denominator, and that is you must disengage the eye from machshava. Because thoughts don't stop. Every moment you're thinking about something. What happens? What happens is, when a person can really do that, the eye somehow could start experiencing the consciousness of the world, the consciousness of existence, that's not being pulled down in a particular thought. So when I want to know something, by definition, I need to know it. So I have to tune into this information and listen to it and think about it. That's called yoideya. And that's called hislapshus. And there's a change before I knew it, while I knew it, and after I knew it. Before I knew it, I was in this place. After I know it, I'm in this place. And in the middle of knowing it, I'm in this place. And we can all see that. When thoughts are happening, most thoughts take the people with them. I am what I think. So the thoughts schlep me and they define me. Why do they define me? Because that's what I'm involved in. It takes a lot of work to be able to watch the thoughts from a distance. Usually, especially if you're busy, yeah, the thoughts, this is where I am. Every thought chaps me and it changes me while I'm involved. So there's the me before, there's the me in the middle, and there's the me after. That's das tachten. Das elyon is a different Indian. It's goli v'yadua. It's known. You don't know, it's known. What's the difference? So you would think, oh, you're somewhere in some abstract world, right? And it's known. Artificial intelligence, right? You put into, even not artificial, you put in a search into Google. And a second later, yeah, it knows all the information, yeah? Does Google get overwhelmed from so much overload? It's like, sorry, sorry. There's only a million sources. If I would tell you, you got to go through 1 million websites to get the information, yeah? You would say, kill me first. Why? Because every one, it takes me with it. It takes me. It takes my brain. It takes my heart. It takes my time. It takes my mental space. It takes my energy. One website is enough for a headache. 1 million websites, 1 million sources. That's because it's bislapshus. What's goli v'yadua? It's known. But usually when it's known, you're completely up there. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence means you're completely not defined by it. It's all a computer system. So fine, it's all there. It's all there. How much information does cyberspace have? How much information? And in an instant, it could come up. Somebody sent me, they typed into artificial intelligence. They said, give me a sermon on Parshas Shlach in the style of Rabbi YY Jacobson.
It's not so bad.
3 seconds later, it gave them a sermon. I take a look, yeah? I see there's a joke in the beginning, there's a story here, there's a story at the end, there's a story in the middle. And basically it's all about, it was Parshas Shlach, that the problem of the Meraglim is fear. And you have to confront fear. So I'm like looking, yeah. I was like, wow, pretty good. I can't tell you that I would put my haskam on it, mamish, because artificial intelligence, with all due respect, it knows the mitzias, it doesn't know the muhus. It knows the facts, it doesn't know the essence.
It's not up to the yadu.
Right. It's goli v'yadua, but the way it could be goli v'yadua is through, it's detached. So it has a mechanism that all the information is there and it doesn't define me. So you would think that's pshat das elyon. Das elyon means it's known by God. He doesn't have to know, it's known. If artificial intelligence knows, Hashem knows. So he says that's not the vart.
Artificial intelligence is different because it's based on the set of the information you feed it.
Right.
So if you feed garbage you
Yeah.
pitch out.
Yeah.
Or if you feed limited stuff, it's not
Right.
enough.
Right.
So you cannot feed the mehus.
Right. Right. You're feeding information, yeah. Achgam bebchinis das elyon, you do a lefon of hakal beprotius. But it's not pshat das elyon, he doesn't know all the details or the nuances. Kamay mit Azal, the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, but Rosh Hashanah kol boy elam everything lefon of kibnei manan shenimnim echad echad. V'kulam niskaden beskira achas afal pisha oivrin zah chazet shazawinyin dashgacha protis al kol pratu prachanim tzalamat. The Gemara says on Rosh Hashanah, we say by Nasana Toikef, all the people of the world pass by Kibnei Marin. Kibnei Marin is like when sheep go by and you're counting each one. It also says they're all scanned, niskarin biskira achas, with one gaze, with one scan, even though they're passing one after another. In other words, there's hashgacha pratis, divine providence on every detail. V'at shamr razal, the Medrash says, at shalei noisam achshava beliba shaladam golui v'yadua lefanav yizbarach. before the thought developed in your brain, it was known to him. In other words, the hashgacha is not just on every action, it's even every thought you're having. Even before you consciously develop the thought, it's already known to him. The chiddush of Yadua is not that it's disengaged from details. Like the Gemara says, it's all skira achas. With one scan, Hashem scans all of history, all of reality. Okay, so you get the picture. That's not the word. The word is every thought, every detail. To get every detail, you need hislapshus. You need to go into it. You changed. So in das tachten, how do I know everything? How I yedeya. In das elyon, it's yodua. It's known. Goloi v'yodua. So on one hand, every single thought is known, and yet it's not called b'bchinas hislapshus in the sense I'm not defined and transformed by it that the thought actually pulls me down. And with this, the Alter Rebbe gives an answer to a question. Now, just the question itself is hafla v'fela. The Alter Rebbe's question. The Alter Rebbe says in the Mamer in Tovkov Samachei, we talk about machshavas zaros. What are machshavas zaros? Alien thoughts. I'm in the middle of davening and I'm thinking about everything else. I'm in the middle of learning. Machshavas zaros. Machshavas zaros doesn't mean prohibited thoughts. Alien thoughts, machshavas zaros. Says the Alter Rebbe, who's the one who has the most machshavas zaros in all of history? Hashem. Every thought of every person, he knows. The Alter Rebbe says, oh my God, pun intended. Oh my God, how many machshavas zaros do you have? Every machshava he knows. Like we say in Tehillah, Hashem Yodea Machshavas Adam. He knows all the machshavas. The destructive and constructive, futile and real, authentic and inauthentic, meshagas and not. How many thoughts do you have a day? How many thoughts do you have a second? Do you have a minute? It's a lot. And that's every creature and every animal and every person. Yomim v'layla, and as the Gemara says, the Medrash says, every thought even before it develops by you, he already knows it. That's a lot of machshavas zaros he's dealing with. Oh my God, what does God's brain look like? A lot of data. Machshavas zaros v'divrei avoy. So he's filled with machshavas zaros. The Alter Rebbe says no. Kivan she'enzu b'chinas hislapshus machshava klal. Kiyim shu b'derech goli v'yadua b'derech memela. K'moshe legabe Yosef lo hoya mevalbelim ha'machshavas medivrei ha'olam. And this came out by Yosef. Yosef's machshavas of Egypt was goli v'yadua. Not Yodeya, it was Yadua, because that's how it is in Atzilus. You hear what he's saying? This is a very, very heavy word. This is how the whole idea of Kelim Atzilus translates into Yosef's life. There's a way of disengaging. When you disengage, it makes sense, because thoughts will schlep you down. If I'm going to learn about everybody's life, you have to be defined by it. You're a therapist who's sitting in an office, yeah? You're coming to him, you're pouring your heart out. He has to tune into what you're saying, and it's going to change him. After a day, he's going to be exhausted. They say there was a new therapist, and he walked out of the office the first day, and he met Dr. Plotkin. Dr. Plotkin was a psychotherapist for 60 years. But he says, how was your first day? He says, I don't know how you do it. I'm about to have a heart attack. I want to quit. He says, what happened? He says, I'm sitting here 9 hours. Every 45 minutes, somebody else comes in. Crazy stories. I'm listening. I'm the destroyed person. Dr. Plotkin, how are you doing this for 60 years? He says, who's listening? Who gave you this mashagas that you have to sit and listen? You got to do your own thing. It's very easy to leave. You disassociate, fine. Spiritually, it's also that way. A person there's people in certain places, they could meditate for 20 years, 30 years, 12 hours a day. It's like, when is a cholent coming out? It's not coming out. Right? They say there was a Jewish kid who ended up somewhere in India, and he went into some ashram, and they told him that the rule is that every 5 years you can only speak 2 words. The rest of the time you meditate. So the first 5 years, Yankel is there, he's meditating, and then the guru says, no. So he says, food, bad. Okay? Another 5 years he's silent. No, he says, mattress, horrible. Another, so now it's 10 years already. That's 15 years. No, I quit. The guru says it's about time. All you've been doing is complaining. All I heard from you in 15 years was complaints. Geh Gesundheit, Baruch Shepatrani. If I'm listening to you, it's going to change me. If I'm not listening, it won't. Like we learned before about a marriage, about a neshama and a guf. The soul listens to the body, it gets changed. The body listens to the soul, it gets changed. There's no other way about it. That's called islapshus. That's called das tachten. It's supposed to be that way. I tune into your world and I listen to you. I'm defined by you. Sorry, I'm not the same person pre the session, after the session, in the middle of the session. And if you are, you're disassociated. The question is, why did you have to disassociate? It's too intense. You're too afraid. That's what people do. Freeze, flight, fawn. Why? Because it's too hard. It's too much. Why do people disassociate emotionally? Why do they shut down their emotions? Not because they don't have emotions, because they had too many emotions that were hurt. And if they're going to remain present, they're going to get a dagger again and again and again. So I stop feeling. People stop feeling. They give all types of excuses. This one calls it amunah. This one calls it religion. This one calls it moyach shalit alalev. I'm an intellectual. You're not an intellectual. You're a traumatized, fearful child, which I get. I'm not judging. It's not judging, but you're not an intellectual. You're not such an intellectual. This is very, very important to understand. Das Tachten is the courage of islapshus, presence. Presence means I go into a situation and I'm present. And you know what? I'm going to feel the scars. I'm going to feel the wounds. Yeah, that's what a relationship is. I go into a war zone. I'm not detached. The relationship affects me. That's called islapshus. So you would think, what was Yosef's chiddush? He was disassociated. That's what you would think. That's against the whole vart of the Mamer. You understand? It's Yosef. That's not the vart of Yosef. He wasn't disassociated. How do I know he wasn't disassociated? Maybe Yosef was just this intellectual, artificial intelligence type of guy, right? And he could sit in his office. He didn't really care about anything. Yeah, he was brilliant. He could run an economy. He did it between 5 and 6 p.m. You know, he gave orders and everybody worked for him and that was it. That's not the vart. How do you know? I've told you many times in Tanakh, nobody cries as many times as Yosef. In Chumash itself, Yosef cries 8 times. And that's in Chumash, besides in Medrash. What does that show? He's constantly crying. The Shvatim spoke to him after Yaakov's death, he was crying. He met Binyamin, he cried. He met his brothers, he cried. He heard them regret, they cried. He met them, he cried. He met Yosef, he cried. But Yosef doesn't stop crying. In other words, he's emotionally extremely vulnerable. He feels the pain, he knows the pain, he experiences it. He's not a detached human being. He's fully present in every experience. And you could see it from the story. You could see Yosef didn't run the economy of Egypt from an ivory tower. He didn't run it with a joystick. He was present. Oh, Basi, you have to be defined by it. Yeah, Dr. Plotkin could sit on the couch. Who's listening? Talk. Cry, yeah? And there are such therapists maybe, right? Every 10 minutes they're like, and what else are you feeling? And what else? You ever went to such a guy? And at the end, you just say, I think you're suffering from a lack of confidence and depression. Come back next week. What else are you feeling? Hislapshus is not that. Hislapshus is huayedeya. That's the whole vart of this Mamer. The vart of this Mamer is Yosef's chiddush was that he could be fully present and still, the machshavas didn't define him. Why not? So this is the chiddush of Eirein Sof, Lamata Den Tachlis. And that's the word Huayadua. Huayadua doesn't mean that Hashem knows from a detached place. Again, shtickle Google, shtickle artificial intelligence. It's knowing the information is there. Hashgacha pratis means that every prat every prat is involved. Yosef is running the country. So the machshavas have to schlep him down. It's machshavas zaris. You know how much pressure there is? You know how much craziness there is? The idea of Goli v'Yadua is that because Eirein Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis, So therefore, even the finite thought, it's back to the mashal of the letter. The one letter defines you when you're outside of the picture. When you're inside the picture, that one letter is just a manifestation of infinity. So what does this mean? This means that Yosef, in every machshava, he was not pulled down by the thought, because he was so anchored in Ein Sof, he lifted up the thought back to Ein Sof. You understand what that means? He's going to give another illustration from the Baal Shem Tov here. Also, Chidush Gadol, he brings a mashal from the Baal Shem Tov. Let's see, and we'll finish with this paragraph. U'Moisef Sham, in the Mamer, he adds that Rebbe Marash's Mamer, Shematzinu Kein Etzel Nisi Yisrael Gam B'Derech Shel Achariza. It says not just a story about Yosef. You see it even in later generations by Nisi Yisrael, by true leaders of the Jewish people. Shazal Shapal HaBaal Shem Tov Zechreinu Levracha Sha'av She'hoya Lamata B'Olam Haza Agashmi La'yiloi Shum Stira Klali Is Gamkin B'Olam Esel Yoinim Kvi Shemavayir Admurem Tzoi Masha Baal Shem Tov Hispalel Kamat Tfilis Sheyuchal Lahoshiv L'Shoy Le'Dover Beis Aliyas Nishmasai. How flew a fella? It says the Baal Shem Tov felt that he has a struggle. What's a struggle? The Baal Shem Tov used to have Aliyas HaNeshama. What's Aliyas HaNeshama? Neshama goes up. What does it mean Neshama goes up? So these funny stories about the Baal Shem Tov. His Neshama, you have Aliyas Neshama very often. What's Aliyas Neshama? Aliyas Neshama is not some superstitious, strange thing. Aliyas Neshama is actually, it's a very real inyan that the Neshama, at this moment, so to speak, separates, it disengages from its presence inside the structure of the body, the ego, whatever that means in a person's life, and it experiences its pure relationship with the divine. And Dafka, in this generation, we can appreciate what this means, at least the concept of it, that there's different ways in which a person can suddenly, they call it death of ego, the death of ego. Meaning, I'm not anymore defined by all my thoughts and my self-consciousness and my... But rather, there's a moment of freedom where the neshama can start breathing. And suddenly there's a differentiation between the ego self and the pristine soul self. So the Baal Shem Tov, this was organic, this was natural, this was his life. Aliyas neshama. And he had a challenge. What was the challenge? The challenge is people would come to ask him, and it was hard for him to answer. So the Baal Shem Tov davened many tefillas that he should be able to answer people's questions be'ein Aliyas neshama. So the Rebbe says, what's the chiddush? He was a good man. V'hainu her. The imeyoshe kadei lahashiv l'shayli binyanei elam hazet tzarich lahashiv l'fri pratei hashayla v'ashayel. Mikol makim b'shas ma'isa oimedu b'avidos madrigose k'may ba'elam aliyah. Baal Shem Tov was no Dr. Plotkin. I have nothing against Dr. Plotkin. It's just... The Rebbe says, for the Baal Shem Tov to answer, you have to answer according to the questionnaire and the question. I can't answer you according to me. You have to answer according to you. You have to live through the other person. You have to have empathy. You have to know what he's experiencing. Can't tell him, why don't you come join me for Aliyas Neshama? And then you won't have any problems. That's not how you answer a question. You can never answer a question based on you. You have to answer based on him, based on her. That's the chiddush. So answering the Baal Shem Tov, he didn't answer a question like a robotic answer, Go say till him. Go to the Gabbai. Sign up. We'll send you the literature. Make sure you put on a dava before you leave. The Baal Shem Tov had to tune into where the person is. And what if the person is in Shol Tachtis? What if the person is in the abyss? Come out. Right? I'll derech the story with Reb Nachman, right? You got to go with the rooster under the table. Just come out of under the table, shoita. That's not how you answer. That's the vart. But if you're in a state of Aliyas Neshama, one second, it doesn't work that way. So for this, the Baal Shem Tov had to daven. He had to daven Kama Tfilis, and it says in one of the Mamorim that this he reached only towards the end of his life. In other words, there were two modes. Now I'm not in Aliyas Neshama, I'll speak to you. And it's hard, but I'll go there. Aliyas Neshama, you're in Aliyas Neshama. You're in a completely transcendent journey where the whole ego doesn't exist. The whole self doesn't exist. It's almost a narishkeit. Now you come to me with your problems, I'll say, do me a favor. Leave me alone. Go to somebody else with your mishagas. That's not answering. Umesayim sham shebelel Shabbos kodesh haya Baal Shem Tov beis shlish lamaylo shlish aleph lamata ubeshar yemei achol behepech shlish aleph lamaylo beis shlishim lamata. Mittler Rebbe says in Toras Chaim that the Friday night the Baal Shem Tov was 2/3 up there and 1/3 down here. And during the days of the week, he was 1/3 of him was up there and 2/3 were down here. Just the definition. How do they measure it? How do you measure it? I don't know how to measure it. But apparently there were 2/3 in the Baal. There were three dimensions, three madregas, 3 dimensions of the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov, Shabbos, Leil Shabbos Kodesh, 2/3 were up and 1/3 stayed down. So that's why he could respond. And on the weekdays, there was still 1/3 was above, but 2/3 were down.
He was in the 3 levels of Atzilus, Beriah, Yitzir. So, and he was like in Atzilus and then 2 levels down. Yeah,
we learned from the Hashem. Hashem says that in everything, Bayala Teva, in every word, there's Olamis, Neshamis, and Elokus. So it could be it's connected to that. Could be it's connected to Beriah, Yitzir, Asiyah, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. The point is, when you say that, when you mean 2/3, what does it mean 2/3 above and 1/3 down? Doesn't mean physically. 2/3 means, why does the Mittler Rebbe say this? So he says, "V'hainu she'ilu yizeh she'inyoni achel bilbul oisei ma'aveidasei eine mitzad mailas haShabbos ela mitzad inyoni hu shelechein misayim shal derech zeh haya gam b'shayim moisachel k'moi shelegabe Yosef lo haya milvalbul im ha'machshavos medivrei ha'olam." This comes back to machshavos zaros. Does Hashem have machshavos zaros when He thinks about me? And what if He's thinking about all of my issues that are very, very, let's put it this way, not so geschmack, not so nice? What if it's ugly? What if it's grotesque? What if it's immoral? What if I'm having a thought that is extremely troublesome morally? That's a real machshavos zaros. If I start thinking about your machshavos zaros, what happens to me? I have enough of my own machshavos zaros. Now I have to have your. Imagine everyone starts thinking everybody else's machshavos zaros. But the truth is, since the reality of everything is Ein Sof, so the reality of every thought from the perspective of Atzilus is Ein Sof. Hashem is not knowing my machshava from someone else. He's knowing my machshava because everything is one. V'ata mechayes kulam. Because He is my machshava. So that means one means 2 things. First of all, He's completely present in every machshava. It also means that the machshava doesn't take him away from Ein Sof. Why? Because he's experiencing the machshava from within. He is the machshava. There's no machshava outside of him. So l'chayr he has the worst machshava zaros. The Rebbe says, no, it's not machshava zaros. It's Ein Sof. And that's why there's no thought that is hopeless. And that's why there's no such a thing. You're in a sha'al, you're in the abyss. You're calling it the abyss. God is also in the abyss. So Hashem is in the worst Gehenna of everybody. Because He's in everybody's abyss. Wow, you're the worst off. It's Hineka. Ein Sof is not afraid of the abyss. The abyss is also Ein Sof. So He doesn't know my thoughts because He says, now let me sit down on the couch and listen to what this disturbed guy has to say. I'm knowing it from within. It's knowledge from within. Hu amadu, hu ayadev, hu ayadua. In das Tachte, in das of Beriah over there, there's a slapshus. In das Elyon, there's also a slapshus. What's pshat slapshus? Slapshus not in a way that now I'm pulled down by your thought. No, you're pulled up by my thought of your thought. Because my thought of your thought is me. That's Ein Sof. That's the Kiddush of Ein Sof. There's no Nekuda that's not Ein Sof. So Yosef HaTzadik is not afraid of any thought. Bring it on, that's fine. The Baal Shem Tov could be in Aliyas Neshama and then tune into a child's problem and listen to it. Why? Why? It's going to bring you down. Baal Shem Tov was poil not. The Baal Shem Tov had to work on himself. He had to daven to be able to go into a place of Atzilus. And over there, Kalim are as Ein Sof as Ohr. Over there, the most finite thing is as infinite as the most infinite reality. That's the chiddush of Ein Sof l'mata den tachlis. Goli v'yadua. V'hainu lefi shu al derech chiyin de goli v'yadua v'al derech zeh b'tzadikim shedaimim l'boida. It wasn't only a chiddush of Shabbos. The Shabbos was a special siyata d'shmai. There was something the Baal Shem Tov had to work through in the weekdays also. It says tzadikim daimim l'boidim. The Medrash says tzadikim reflect their Creator. That's the key. Shalachein gam kashem meishiv l'fli prati ha'inyan v'ashoyel eina mispoil v'eina mishtana. So I listen to you, I respond to you according to you, and he's not transformed and affected and pulled down and compromised. Why not? Because tzadikim daimim l'boidim. What's tzadikim daimim l'boidim? They can experience life from the experience of the Beriah, of the Creator. And what's the experience of the Creator? Hashem doesn't say, "Oh, you're too messed up. I'm not thinking about you." Even Google doesn't say that. Google has no problem. You're a website. I'm going to have you in my thing. But Google is not. It's not bislapshus. You understand? It's information. It's data. Here, it's much deeper. Here, there's no thought that I'm going to disengage from. You know why? I'm not afraid of it. You know why I'm not afraid of it? Because it's also me. If it's also Ein Sof, so he's not afraid of it. So Yosef could completely think and process everything that's going on in Egypt with all the pratim. So how doesn't it take him away from Avodas Hashem? The Shvatim are working 60 years on meditating all day. And you're sitting in a crazy country, Eretz Haaretz. Why is it not schlepping you down? And this is the answer of Goli v'Yadua. Imagine, how does Hashem experiences every thought? The way he experiences every thought is with the ultimate empathy, with the ultimate love, with the ultimate recognition and awareness that this is just another manifestation of infinity. So this thought doesn't pull me down. The very definition of the thought is another gili of Ein Sof. So I'm not afraid of it. In our life, let's think about this, right? A person needs to have the avoid of Yosef's brothers, because if not, I told you, if I just jump into Yosef, it's not going to be Yosef, it's just going to be enmeshment and entanglement. That's why there's a zman of tefillah, there's a zman of Torah, there's a zman of izbeidus. There are those people who are Torasam umnosam. Every person according to the shlichus of his neshama. But every person needs to be anchored. If not, I'm not going to be able to even relate to this. When I'm really anchored, I could be fully present in every relationship, in every experience. I can be fully present with all my thoughts. I don't have to run away from any thought. We're afraid of thoughts. Why are we afraid of thoughts? Because they're nasty. They're weird. They're difficult. Yosef says, don't be afraid. How can you not be? It's going to schlep me down. Either you detach or you go there. The answer is Goli v'Yadua. Don't be idea, be Yadua. Let it be known. Don't know it. Let it be known. What does it mean? You define it. Don't let it define you. If you define it rather than letting it define you, then you remain completely anchored in the Ein Sof, and you can almost watch that thought, see it, be present, appreciate its full ramifications, and then ask yourself, and what does this teach me about truth? And what's my avodah right now with this thought? And how did this ultimately come from the source of Kalim of Atzilus? Can I trace it back? So you could be fully present because you're fully anchored. And then no machshava is going to take you away from this place. The Shvatim, Mitzad Beriah, needed to have a gulf. They needed to, you can't go to these machshavas. And that's understandable. But in the deeper place of Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis, the machshavas are not machshavas zaris. The machshavas are machshavas zaris because they're taking me into their perceived world. But Hashem knows everything because of himself. B'yedias atzmai. It's all part of atzmai. So it's not a machshavas zara. It's an expression of Ein Sof. It's very dirty and very ugly and very immoral and very filthy and even evil and certainly dark and depressing or full of anxiety. That's a good taina. That's what the Shvatim are saying. The Chiddush of Yosef is that because it's Oid Ein Sof, so Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis means it remains Ein Sof. The Baal Shem Tov didn't become a mess as a result of that conversation. The question is now, can you have a conversation with all parts of yourself without becoming a mess? Think of what the Baal Shem Tov did. He's talking to anybody. We have it in ourselves. Can my neshama in its loftiest place talk to every part of me without detaching from it, without making fun of it, without getting consumed by it? The story of the Baal Shem Tov is an internal story. So you'll say, well, if my neshama is down, if my neshama is schlepped arai, no. When the neshama is actually in its true aliyah, then it could go down much lower. If my neshama is in a lower place, it can't. The Baal Shem Tov was pile because he went higher, therefore he can go everywhere. When you go to the highest place, hatachas Elokim ani, I'm not under Elokim. I'm not a victim of Elokim. I'm not a victim of Tzimtzum. I'm completely beyond. Then you could look at everything. Then you're not afraid. Then it's not a machshava zara. Why is it not a machshava zara? Because you rooted tzaddikim daimon lebayram that the Oid Ein Sof could be present in the lamata ad ein tachlis, because it knows that at the core of the lamata ad ein tachlis it's really infinity. You'll say, no, it's not. It's nasty, it's ugly, it's evil. All those definitions were given as a result because I'm not connected to Ein Sof. Okay, we'll take a break here. Be'ezer Hashem, tomorrow morning at 8. I hope to finish the Mamer bli neder. Have a beautiful day. This word, why it's not machshava zodas, is...
So is it the...
If the machshava defines me, of course it's machshava zara. It's horrible. You can't live. Yosef would go crazy. Because he was from Atzilus, so every thought found its source. It touched infinity. The letter was brought back to infinity. So first of all, there weren't many thoughts. It was really one thought. It was rooted in one source. It wasn't many thoughts. It's all Ein Sof. And always goes back to the same root. So he's not running a country with trillions and trillions of details. He's anchored in one nekuda. Spread into many things. But you have to understand how deep that avoid is. Like you have to be completely... He's not looking to... If you're looking for validation, if you're looking to be successful, in other words, if I'm needy, then I'm completely in a different place. You have to be so...
You need to be needed.
Needed, not needy. You have to be needed. Yeah.
I asked yesterday, and he knew he was a part of, a big part of what?
He told his brothers, Elokim sent me. I'm not under Elokim. Elokim sent me. I'm sorry, what?
Yesterday I asked, all this being said, what's the definition of fathom? In other words, after learning this, there is no thing that is not a fathom. What's the significance of
You're saying if everything is really Elokus, so what's the chiddush of a neshama that it's chelek Elokam imal?
His grandfather. That's actually the question as a problem. Because you're looking for definition, which is by definition is not correct.
Shabbos nach davening. Yeah. A great Suda, they're having a Suda and a Farbrengen.
We say it every day.
What do you mean? Right. So that's an interesting example. What's Golei v'yadua? Hashem is busy with your digestive, reproductive, urinary system, really? That's what you're dealing with the whole day, with my Beis HaKisei issues. It's a funny thing. And you say, Lifnei Kisei Chveidecha. I think there's a word from the LGani. He says, what do you say here, Lifnei Kisei Chveidecha? He says, you could think that such things, it's not Lifnei Kisei Chveidecha, it's a lower, it's a lower Indian. So he says, no, Golei v'yadua, Lifnei, it's even higher than Kisei Chveidecha. So what's the Havana? That's the Havana of Yadua. Mitzad the Kelim of Mitzad Atzilus, of course it's Goli v'yadu. Every detail, it's not Negeya. How small it is, how insignificant it is. It's not small, it's not insignificant.
Yeah, we say it mechanically without comprehending.
Right. It's really a revolution. You're coming out of the bathroom and basically saying that Hashem, b'chvoidei ba'atzma, l'fnei chisei chvoidecha, Goloi v'yadua, how my body works, if one thing gets stopped or plugged, or if something gets open, doesn't have to be open, I won't be able to exist, okay? And this is Goloi v'yadua, this is what he's busy with. So he says, machshav zoras. But mitzad yadua, no, every prat is known, every prat is connected, every prat is accounted for, every prat is cherished. Every single prat. There's no nekuda that's out of it. And it's not a machshava zara. Because you're not being pulled down by the machshava zara. Fakert. It's all Ein Sof. If it's real Ein Sof, it's everything. It's not.
It's impossible to come right. We can't relate to such an abundance of love.
We can't relate to such abundance of love. We always want to detach. We want to say, this doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. You're not going to care about this. You're not going to care about it. You're going to care about my I should start talking to you about my toothaches now. Well, I should talk to you about my stomach ache. What should I tell you? That I woke up at 2 o'clock, had to go to the bathroom. Somebody cares? You care?
What are the three shittas about Caleb? We should have three shittas about Caleb.
Three. It's three, but here he discusses the first two.
Only the first shittas is Yeshman.
First shit is Kel Yashman. The second shit is Gili Yahela. Mareches. Shittas are Mareches. Shittas are Rikantis. The first shit is Mareches the second. The poil, they're all true, but it's different in Yanim, yeah. But this vart is that it's all Elokus, yeah. Kalim is Elokus. Kalim is the Koyach HaGvul of Ein Sof. It's the way Hashem is expressed through Gvul. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, so it has definition. Elokus is not Gvul. The answer is not Elokus is Gvul. Elokus is not Gvul. Elokus is Ein Sof, but part of Ein Sof is Gvul. So in Atzilus it's not, but in Atzilus it's not Gvul. The way it affects outside of Atzilus is Gvul. It's a keli that what? That someone outside, so to speak, can experience Gvul through the keli. Like the Koyach HaKsiva.
Interface, this is it.
What an interface. It's a hafladik avar that this madrega of Yosef, the Baal Shem Tov, that he says, tzadikim daimel l'bayram, you can be present in every situation, listen to any issue, and be involved in it, care about it. You could tune into any question, be'emes, not b'chitzayni, is just to make the person feel good. In other words, you're fully present, and it doesn't take you away from complete dvekus.
You have to go into the soil. Yeah.
Even in the shoil and tak in the shoil. And it's not a machshava zara. You're not overwhelmed. You're not even schlepped down. You're not even compromised or diluted.
So Baal Shem Tov was able to do it for others.
So the Baal Shem Tov, it says, Hispalel kama tfilis. It says, B'soif yamav, he achieved this. That Shabbos, after that, it says, Belel Shabbos, that's when Aliyah Soilim is. After davening, he could answer people.
The Baal Shem Tov achieved at the end of his life. I need to go do it today.
Baal Shem Tov did it with others. We can do it with ourselves. We don't have Baal Shem Tovs today. We don't.
The Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov was opening a path. Obviously, it's not l'fiyerech the Baal Shem Tov, but it's opening, just like Yosef. It's not l'fiyerech Yosef, but it opens a path. Every person according to his level, obviously. And as I said, it's inside of yourself. all the different parts of ourselves, throwing out all the questions and problems, right? Can I listen to it and respond? Or I either get schlepped down in anxiety or fear, or I have to detach, and I cut off parts of me. So that's the whole chiddush of Yosef, and this the Shvatim had a very hard time with. That's why, it's connected to IFS. But even till today, you'll see a lot of people have a challenge with this. Like sometimes people send comments to me, like, You can't listen to all your parts. You have to ignore some parts. You have to get angry at some parts. You have to cut off parts. Just move on. You're getting schlepped down. And I understand. It's so overwhelming. It's very scary. And it's dangerous. Bedakus, the dakus, in a very deep place, this is what the Shvatim tainet. The Shvatim tainet, Yosef, you have to choose. Mishalani al tzarena. You want to go to all the machshavas zadas? Fine, but with us. Go to Mitzrayim, and we'll see what happens. But Yosef was megala, the real union of Achdus Hashem. The real union of Achdus Hashem is that it's lamata adin tachlis. So in Mele, it's not a machshavas zara.
Wife of Potiphar, he had the machshavas zara. Mistama, but he went inside of it to pull himself out. But Mistama.
It's a moide dikavart from the Maggid of Mizrich. The Mordeinayim brings from the Maggid. He heard from the Maggid. It's a hafla dikavart. It says that what saved him, the image of Yaakov, his father. It says, what's pshat? He knew what Yaakov looked like. What he saw the image of Yaakov, his father. He says a hafla dikavart. It's not pshat. It was two stories. Potiphar's wife wanted to get him, and then he saw Yaakov, his father, and that schlepped him away. It's the same story. Listen to this. It's the same story. What was the power of Potiphar's wife? The Maggid says her power was tiferes, beauty. Yosef himself was Yefei Torah v'Yefei Mari. He himself was beautiful. So mitzad the beauty, he was being lured in. Vayavei habayis lasas malachtai. Here he says it's the cheshbonis. But in the Gemara in Saita, one of the shittas is that it was lasas malachtai. It's hainu hach. He was completely entrenched in Mitzrayim. Dumuz the Yokna shal Yaakov Aviv. Yaakov is midas hatiferes. So Yosef. So what are you really looking for? You're looking for tiferes. If you're looking for tiferes, what's the source of all tiferes? Yaakov. Yaakov is midas hatiferes. Titenemis liYaakov. So b'meila, it wasn't despite Potiphar's wife he ran away to Yaakov. It was actually he saw that this is what he's looking for in Potiphar's wife. He's really looking for tiferes. This is Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis. That's the embodiment of it. It's not pshat. He ran away. Which is also not to underestimate that moededik madrege. It's much more. Vayonas vayetze achutzi taiches. He took the very machshava and he took it out of its hagbala and he brought it out hachutza. He brought it back to its uninhibited source, so to speak. In Atzilus, what is it? You're looking for Yaakov. Everything a person is looking for, what are you really looking for? You're looking for Potiphar's wife, yeah. What's really, what's behind it? Go deep, deep, deep down. What are you really looking for? You're looking for a dveikus, you're looking for attachment, you're looking for connection. You're looking for tiferes. With her, you're not going to get it. You're going to get a fake version. And then regret it. That's how you know it's yeah. Yeah, and you can't even. She's married to somebody, so it's not. You're not going to be. In Yaakov, you'll be able to have it. This is your father. If you want to mamish, bring it down in very simple words. Yosef realized that he's not looking for Potiphar's wife. He's looking for a father. So very often, if I don't have a father, I'm looking for you. I'm looking for everybody. And then he realized Muzdi Yoikna, he's looking for a father. And when he found that. You're not going there. But it's the same inyan. It's not pshat Yosef just disengaged. No. He turned the machshav zara into Eretz Sof.
That's why I said Diyukna, because unique.
He saw the image. Muzdi Yoikna shal Yaakov Ovid. In Potiphar's wife, he saw really the Muzdi Yoikna. From her, he learned what he's looking for. He's looking for tiferes. So fakert, she helped him. Go back to Yaakov. Now, you have to be very honest with yourself. This is a very serious. Sometimes you just have to run away. Ataza. Because he was in Atzilus, so he can go down to every place, including to Sha'ol. And not only does it not schlep him down and take him away from it, on the contrary, he brings that back to Ein Sof. It's not just Yosef. Even in the world, he could still daven shacharis with kavana. That's not the chiddush. It's also a chiddush. It's also a chiddush that you run a big country, but you could still daven shacharis. The vart is no. The running the country itself was shacharis.
He's running away from her because of the taiva, from the dragon that the brothers were.
Yeah. Mitzad the brothers, you can't have both. Either you're a shepherd, or you become defined by toxicity. And you see fakert, if you want to really get down to it, you see Yehuda, who was the biggest fighter against Yosef, he ended up by Tamar. Yosef, who was the one who was, thrown away, he's the one who withstood all the tests. Because that's really what happens. When you separate the two worlds, it's beautiful as long as you're separated. The moment you confront Olam Haza, you can lose everything. You understand what I'm saying? Your whole koyach is because you're separated. You're sitting in an attic, gewaldig, beautiful. But one day you're going to face reality. What's going to happen? One day there's going to be internet in the house. One day you're going to get a phone when you're 22. Right? What's going to happen then? It's a very important idea. It's good to be disengaged. It's good to be parush. It's good not to have it. No, so it's important to understand the dangers of Olam Haza. But if that becomes the only avodah, then one day you face reality and it's very dangerous. What happens to a lot of younger lights, yeah? They grew up in a very, very sheltered environment and it's beautiful, but they're not given the tools to confront their own reality and the world's reality. And one day they go out and they could lose everything and sometimes lose it worse than other people. I'm not going to be ma'idech here, but the reason is because they fall so low because they have no mechanism of dealing with it. So Yosef's inyan is essential to understand that Einoid Mulvadoi means Va'ata Mechayes Kulam. Va'ata Mechayes Kulam means you have to find a shchin in every nekuda in life. Of course, you have to be real and practical, and you have to know what's for you and what's not for you. This is not a mitzvah that every person becomes a prime minister of Egypt and goes into Potiphar's wife. That's not what we're saying, chas v'shalom. But this is the chiddush of Yosef. Ayrin sof lamata den tachlis.
Be the same thing with the story of Abba Omne and Rava.
Yeah. Abba Omne versus Rava. Yeah. It's a sensitive inyan because sometimes it can also be said in the wrong way. In other words, the only way this can be said is when you're talking Atzilus. If I'm saying this from the perspective of Asiya, it's already... The only one who can go down to these places is somebody who's much higher, not somebody who's lower. The Baal Shem Tov went so high so he can go down everywhere. If he wasn't so high, he couldn't. Stay away. Don't go there. It's going to be machshav zaris. It's going to be machshav zaris.
Does that mean that the brothers didn't go with far enough, or?
No, their neshamas came from Elam Beriah.
I don't know if he's Atzilus or I'm saying like, well, in other words,
we don't have a problem. We're from Asiya, don't worry. We don't have a problem. Every neshama comes from Elam Atzilus. The question is what it goes through. Yosef, from Atzilus, he came into Elam Haza. The brothers went through Elam Beriah. The reason we learn about this is because every neshama is connected to Atzilus, B'ri, Yitzir, Asiya. So in every person's life, you have to have the avodah of the Shvatim and the avodah of Yosef. Yeah, you have to figure out exactly different situations and where you are in life. But the model of Yosef is something that becomes a lesson for every Jew. Not mamish in the same chin of Yosef. Not everybody, again, has to go down to Egypt and become the prime minister of Egypt and sit in prison for 12 years and get involved with Eishes Potifar and get into a fight with it. But the Nekuda, Yosef brought in a new Nekuda in Avodas Hashem. That applies to everybody. Kol Chad from Shura Delay. Just like you have Yisachar and Zvulun, you have Teirasi and Monsey, and you have Bala Yesek. But in each one, you have to have Iskalalus. Even a person who's Teirasi and Monsey, the Gemara says in Yavamas, Kol Ha'omer ein li ela Torah, Filu Torah ein li. Somebody says, I only have Torah, he doesn't even have Torah. Somebody says, Dira b'tachtoinim, I'm just busy with the world the whole day, I don't have to daven, I have to learn. No. That's not a seder. That doesn't work that way in Avodas Hashem. How much, what, when, where, that you have to know the shlichus of your neshama. But generally, there's always a scalulus. Everything has to be integrated. If it's not integrated, it means that it's just, my own little trip.
I think it's a very dangerous question. How do we know which neshama we're coming from? It's dangerous because it could be so easily manipulated. I've heard many people say, oh, he's from Atzilus, he's from Beriah. It's so dangerous because they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, you have to, I wouldn't say about a neshama defining where it's from. If you're a neshama of Atzilus, you'll know it. And if you don't know it, it's probably you're not there.
Maybe there's a guy hallucinating. Because he had a type of neshama, lifespan.
Different avoida, yeah, different avoida.
Find out very.
He seems all different avoida. Yosef saw right away that he's not operating on their level. He had different dreams, he was thrown into a pit, he became a slave, he went into prison. But he never lost his simcha. Why didn't he lose his simcha? So many tzaras, yeah? You should become a bitter old man very fast. Cynical, bitter. The answer is, you think I'm under Elokim, you think I'm busy with revenge. I don't live in the world of revenge. I was never a victim of your issues that I should have to take revenge. You have to take revenge, right, when somebody destroyed your life, so now I'm going to take revenge. Hasachas Elokim, you never destroyed my life. That's a hafladik word from the Alter Rebbe. You think I'm under Elokim, so I'm busy with these cheshbonos. It's not shaykh for me to take revenge. You never affected me. You never destroyed me. I was lechatchil in a different place. My whole avodah is a different avodah. I'm good. You're the ones who need the help, not me. Huh? Interesting. Yaakov said Hasachas Elokim anoichi. He says Hasachas Elokim ani, and he says anoichi. Yaakov said anoichi, Yosef said ani. Yeah.
He was Tiferes of Atzilus, so of course.
Yaakov was Tiferes of Atzilus, yeah. So he was also higher than Elokim. The Yosef should say, I'm not under Elokim, I'm higher than Elokim. But Mela, by me, Elokim doesn't make the reality. I'm not suffering from concealment. Because I'm not suffering from the condition of concealment, my entire life is a different shlichus than your life. That's called an honest conversation. You think I'm tachas Elokim, because you're tachas Elokim, I'm not tachas Elokim. What's for you a machshava zara, for me is not a machshava zara.
It's a brilliant way to express
Huh?
it. It's also a brilliant way to express it. You don't say that you're above because it's not modest. You say it in a way of question, using the...
Atachas Elokim ani. Atachas Elokim ani.
When Herzl gestorben. You might have read it, there's Rav Kook, the Mispech of Yerushalayim.
Sheikh ben Yosef. Ich kenne den Hesped, yeah. The Imre Emes wrote about him. Avosei l'tzion oiveres kol gvul. The Imre Emes wrote about Rav Kook. Avosei l'tzion oiveres kol gvul. It's a nice way of saying that he doesn't agree. Avosei l'tzion oiveres kol gvul. Ich verstehe. It's a very dakasdik inyan. In other words, Atzilus is so kedusha, it's so elokos, that there's no yinika. There can be a yinika of chitzainim. Klippa can't nurture from there, because there's no klippa. You understand what I'm saying? If you use that language in a different world, it could be dangerous. Somebody says, so I can go everywhere. I can stay with Potiphar's wife too. You know, when Shapsi Tzvi converted to Islam, so his students said, right, Frank and the others, that Mashiach has to go down to Shalosh Tupasat Meyas to bring up the Netzutzes. So what's more important than converting to Islam? So now you're mamish inside there, and then you'll bring out the Netzutzes. You know, so once you do that, it's all over. The game is over. You understand what I'm saying? And it was all with Isis of Kabbalah, so that made it much more dangerous. So that's why there's always a simon of Shulchan Aruch. Now, the moment somebody starts deviating from Shulchan Aruch, then you know it has nothing to do with Atzilus. Always the barometer. Always the barometer. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says in Pirkei Avos Hillel, I'm having a talmid of Shaladan, yeah? Oyev Shalom, Roidev Shalom, Oyev Sabriyas, or Mekarvon L'Torah. So he's done the first thing, Oyev Shalom, Roidev, what's a Mekarvon L'Torah? So he says, once you say Oyev Shalom, Roidev Shalom, Oyev Sabriyas, so now the Havamin is to bring the Torah down to them. So he says, a Mekarvon L'Torah. How's it going to the Mishnah? It's a very nice thing to... for them. Your Oyev Shalom, you take a love. So okay, so now bring the Torah down to them. He says that's not love. now it means you don't even believe in them. You don't believe in them. You don't believe in the Torah. So maybe you have to now make pshatas. You really love them. Believe in them. Believe in their potential. Believe that they also have a shaykhus to Torah. Bring them to Torah. Don't bring the Torah down. That nekuda changes. It's everything. That's where you see where you're going. There's people who say, I don't love. We're haters. Fine, no problem. We're not makad of anybody to Torah. We don't bring the Torah down. We're not into that. Not we're haters, but we're just disengaged. The whole chiddush of Hillel is Oyev Sabriyas. So, not was jetzt. You can go down Lamata and Tachlis. Question is, you makad of them to Torah, you makad of the Torah to them. Makad of the Torah to them, it means this is already other forces. Huh? Concessions, yeah. Either you don't believe in the Torah, you don't believe in yourself, or you're weak, whatever. Mekarvon l'Torah means that it's Ein Sof Lamata din Tachlis. You're not, you're bringing the Ein Sof there, not, yeah. It says in Medrash that the Shvatim were afraid of Yosef because they saw Yeravim ben Nevat. With Ruach HaKodesh, Yeravim ben Nevat brought back Avodah Zarah, the Enokel. They saw in Yosef Yeravim ben Nevat. That's what it says in Medrash. Why did they see it? Because from Yosef, you could misconstrue it, right? I think the Megala Mukas writes that Yosef begematria Antiochus, and also begematria Melech Yavon. Why? Because the Yavonim were busy with beauty. Yavon is Oisius Noi. So they used Yosef as a model. Look at Yosef. He's a Hellenist. The first Hellenist Jew was Yosef. First Messiavin. Yosef begematria Melech Yavon Antiochus. The emes was Punkt Farker. By Yosef, it was an union of Ein Sof Lamata din Tachlis. And by them, it was just Lamata din Tachlis without Ein Sof. So it's all connected. Yeah. That's the Chiddush. Because Tzadikim Daimon L'Baydim, so just like by Hashem, L'Chayda, what are you comparing yourself? You say, who are you Ideya by Hashem? Olam Atzilus, that's Hashem. So you can have all the machshavas, and it's not machshavas others. The Rambam says, B'yediyas atzma yodeya kol hanevrayim. But because tzaddikim daimon l'bayram, so a real tzaddik is kavayachal, a reflection of the Ein Sof. So b'meila, even by tzaddikim, there could be disunion in life. Like the Baal Shem Tov said, he can answer people. He could be completely present in the world, like Yosef HaTzadik, running all the Mitzrayim, which needs machshava, and yet it completely doesn't take him away from Avodas Hashem. Because tzaddikim adayim l'bayim, so this kayach habayre is reflected in a tzaddik who's completely one with the bayre. So the highest tzaddik is the one. He doesn't have to be disengaged. He's completely present. L'chayre in a matzav of Mitzrayim, listening and relating to and identifying and empathizing and present, because he's changing the world on its terms, and yet it's never a machshava zara. Never takes him away from complete vekas. And that's a whole different inyan.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.